Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. I'm Max Scoville, filling in for Daemon Hatfield, and this week I am joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
It is so weird that you're in that chair.
Tell me about it. And of course, IGN news director Kat Bailey, and boy oh boy do we have some news. Kat, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, what happened? Tell me about it.
Well, jeepers, a verdict was reached in the trial between the Federal Trade Commission and Microsoft, and the judge ruled in favor of Microsoft, denying the FTC's induction request. Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley stated in the ruling the FTC did not show evidence that this merger would lessen substantially competition in this industry, saying, quote, to the contrary, the record evidence points to more consumer access to Call of Duty and other Activision content. The motion for a preliminary injunction is therefore denied. So you seem excited about this. Kat, you've been following this really closely. Is this the be-all, end-all? Is this like a big yes for Microsoft, or is there more after this?
Sure seems like it. So obviously there's another FTC trial. The actual trial's in August, but here's the deal. The deal's is set to go through this month. So by virtue of that, it might already be a done deal by the time the FTC is going at it. And it's a lot harder to untangle a deal that's already gone through than it is to actually try and deny one that's pending. So as a result, it sure seems like this is going to happen, especially since the CMA in the UK was watching this as well and have signaled that they're probably going to reach an accord with Xbox. So this verdict probably sealed the deal for Xbox.
This does seem like the big one. Now, I saw that there's, Xbox is appealing to the CMA to try and get them to kind of reverse their decision from a bunch earlier. Do you see any universe where they decide to be the big stick in the mud that doesn't let this happen?
I think they would have been a lot more difficult if the FTC had been granted the preliminary injunction, because a big reason that the judge did not grant it was because the way the FTC argued its case, which frankly was not very well, they argued it pretty poorly, meant that the judge didn't think that the FTC could win in their trial. And so as a consequence, the CMA is saying, well, we can make a deal. And probably it's going to involve something to do with how they approach the cloud, because in the UK, the big problem was always much more about the cloud than it was about Call of Duty.
Fair. Now, Ryan, as a big Xbox guy, what was your big takeaway from the trial as a whole? Not just sort of the ruling, but I guess everything along the way there.
Well, I was pointing this out on Podcast Unlocked this week. To me, it's now, I guess it was funny at the time, but it's a lot funnier now that we've reached this verdict where the FTC built its whole, I agree, Kat, pretty weak case on Call of Duty, whereas the CMA found a different bone to pick with the cloud stuff, and we'll see. They've agreed to suspend their sort of legal disagreement and try to actually just get a resolution on that. But what's funny to me is the FTC building its whole case on Call of Duty, and from the jump, not only did Phil Spencer and Microsoft say they were going to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation, but it would be business suicide to not put Call of Duty on PlayStation, because sure, you could say, well, yeah, if you make Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox, a bunch of PlayStation owners are going to buy into your ecosystem, whether it's on the console side or the PC side. But Call of Duty is such a juggernaut. It's a unicorn. I mean, it is the one thing. It is the best-selling game of every single year, except the once or maybe twice a decade when Rockstar puts out a new game.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Microsoft, they would lose a lot more money by not putting it on PlayStation every year than they would gain by taking it away and trying to bring over some people to their ecosystem. There was no universe in which they were ever going to take it away from PlayStation, which again, kind of, in hindsight, makes the whole thing extra hilarious to me that we had to burn all of these, I might add, taxpayer dollars that the FTC spent to litigate this. Now, I do agree, the judge said in her ruling that this should be scrutinized. I agree with that. I mean, we've gone through these kind of boom and bust cycles over in the course of American history, particularly over the last century with companies, with big companies and breaking up monopolies, and this certainly was never going to be a monopoly. I mean, even Microsoft themselves has some history with monopoly. They were part of one of those bust cycles where they were sued as as a result of that. But yeah, it's really just interesting how this has shaken out, and it does seem like they haven't put the ball in the end zone quite yet, but the ball's like on the 2-yard line.
They're in the red zone.
Here. Yeah, they're absolutely in the red zone. Just waiting to, it's first and goal here. We're looking good.
No, it's funny. I remember, I think it was from this case, reports that Microsoft made more money off of Minecraft on Nintendo than they do on.
Yeah, and on mobile, proving their own point. Like if they had taken Minecraft off of non-Xbox platforms, they would have also been. Like Phil would be fired because he would deserve to be fired because he'd be flushing away a bunch of money by doing that. So yeah, Call of Duty is that kind of exception to the rule, because you might be watching going, well, what about Bethesda? What about Skyrim? What about Elder Scrolls 6? Those are big games, but again, Call of Duty really is that actual 1 in a million thing. The fact that, I've been doing this a long time. Actually, all three of us have been at this a long time. I know, speaking for me, 10 years ago, I thought, well, Call of Duty, I'm sure will peter out in the next 5 years. Not just because it's bad, but because things just don't tend to last that long and be the number one thing every year for this long. Even you look at Activision itself has kind of gone through, they tend to run things into the ground, for lack of a better term. Like they ran the music craze. Yeah. Guitar Hero got run to the ground.
Skylanders,
Skylanders is a great one. The whole Toys for Bob is the developer.
Toys to Life.
Thank you. Yes. But yeah, Call of Duty has been this 1 in a million unicorn thing that has persisted. So the traditional rules really don't apply to it in the console space. You would never, if you were Microsoft, take it off of any platform.
And a key moment was there was something on the order of 1 million documents submitted by the FTC, and not one of them was able to prove that Xbox did in fact plan secretly to take Call of Duty off of other platforms. Their internal comms matched their public messaging, and Phil Spencer said under oath, no, we're going to do everything we can to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. And also another killer moment was that the internal comments from PlayStation, in which Jim Ryan and others were saying, I'm pretty sure that Call of Duty is going to stay on PlayStation. So from the start, the FTC's case just was not very strong.
Now let's talk about Sony here, because I think in the gamer mindset, it's Microsoft versus Sony, but it's the FTC, which is just business as a whole versus Microsoft in this instance. What's Sony doing right now? Where are they on this whole thing? Because they've said a few things here and there, but what do you think?
I thought it was interesting during the case that there was apparently an email that sent alarm bells ringing with Jim Ryan, and he thought, well, okay, we have to fight this deal tooth and nail. But if you look at also other emails, he was kind of laughing it off a little bit and saying, Xbox should just put out an electric car. What are they doing? And things like that. So it's hard to get a feel for where PlayStation is. One thing that was interesting was that in the ruling, the judge pointed out that PlayStation is perfectly happy to use its status as a market leader to get favorable deals for itself, and has. So in that respect, them crying foul over Xbox effectively trying to do the same thing, she's like, well, that's business, sorry.
Yeah, there's kind of a weird back and forth there where Microsoft makes a bunch of software and technology that other companies, including competitors, widely use. But again, there are more PlayStations out there in the wild than Xboxes. Mm-hmm. So there's a kind of little push and pull there where they kind of have to play into each other's hands a little bit.
I've always felt that PlayStation's kind of argument on this was a little bit in bad faith, and they've been called out on it a few times where Jim Ryan has more or less said, I want to kill this deal because I want to kill this deal because it would hurt Xbox. And so him saying that, it's an existential threat if Call of Duty is on Xbox, well, no, it's not. It's going to stay on PlayStation. So, and so in some ways, when this deal goes through, I certainly in the short term, expect business to continue as usual for Sony at least.
And Sony, I guess in one way you can give them credit because they absolutely succeeded in gumming up the works on this. This could have been a done deal a long time ago, but they pushed and pushed and got it to the point where, they really were like the little devil on the FTC's shoulder saying, "Hey, this is bad. You should do something about this." And they took it to the limit here. But now, it's Jim Ryan's kind of, I don't want to say overplayed his hand, but you've got Nintendo that's signed a 10-year agreement that Microsoft offered. Say, we will put Call of Duty on your Nintendo platforms, the Switch and the Super Switch, for the next 10 years. And they made the same deals with GeForce Now, one other cloud streaming service, and they've made that same offer to Sony, like, hey, here are the terms. We'll keep everything. We'll make sure it's full parity on the platforms. No advantage. Just go ahead and sign this. And of course, they weren't going to sign it yet, but now, what's Jim Ryan's choice? What to sign it? He's not going to not sign it, and Microsoft, like, both Sony and Microsoft lose, not to mention gamers, most importantly, if then Jim Ryan's own hubris got Call of Duty pulled off the PlayStation entirely. That's not going to happen.
I mean, I'm thinking back to like when Fortnite was trying to do crossplay, and Sony was like, "We don't do that."
Right.
And it's like, well, maybe you will for Fortnite. Yeah,
exactly.
a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. That's a great historical example. So it's I think tail between his legs, Jim Ryan's gonna need to sign that 10-year deal now.
Now, I want to talk about sort of the IP side of this, which is really the fun side. This is the thing that's exciting. There's definitely some interesting stuff that could happen. When do you think we're actually going to see, on the Xbox side of things, interesting stuff happening with Activision Blizzard, with the Microsoft Studios logo in front of it?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because I agree. This is my favorite piece of this, because I think back to not long ago, the Xbox showcase 1 month ago, where at the end of it, Phil Spencer makes his one and only appearance on the showcase, closing it out. And much to everyone's surprise, myself included, because I love this game and it is such a deep cut, he is wearing a t-shirt featuring the box art for Hexen, which is a first-person shooter classic from Raven Software. Raven Software is owned by Activision. Hexen itself is a property that belongs to Activision. It used id Software's engines, because Raven and id were super tight.
I mean, id published it, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Raven was always the first one to use id's latest engine. And now, of course, Microsoft owns, id got bought by ZeniMax, but Microsoft bought ZeniMax. Now it's all come together to the point where Raven Software, there are other developers we could do this with in the Activision catalog.
Plenty.
Raven is my particular personal favorite, because they have made Heretic, Hexen, sequels to both of those. They made Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, which until Respawn's recent awesome Star Wars Jedi games came along, I would argue were the best Star Wars action games ever made. Full respect to KOTOR on the RPG side. They've made a couple of great X-Men games. They made X-Men Legends, sort of a Diablo action RPG style game. They made X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is an M-rated Wolverine game, which is awesome. He'd get all torn up.
Hey man, PlayStation's getting one of those.
And they also made Singularity, which was kind of I think that was their last original game. It was a time manipulation first-person shooter before they got put onto Call of Duty support work forever. My point being that Raven has such a decorated history, and they've been obviously a hugely valuable part of Activision, because they're the right-hand man, as it were, to Infinity Ward, Treyarch, and Sledgehammer each year on Call of Duty. But now, if Microsoft, whether they utilize one of the ZeniMax studios, one of their own Xbox first-party studios, someone else in the Activision Blizzard family, they could, and I hope will, free up Raven, again, just as one example, to go out and make their own awesome original video games again, like they did for 20 years before Call of Duty.
I have a little bit of faith that we're going to see that kind of thing under Microsoft more than we have under Activision Blizzard, because I feel like Activision Blizzard is very much about like whale franchises. Absolutely. Where it's like it's got to be World of Warcraft. It's got to be, Call of Duty. It's got to be whatever the big, huge thing is. And the second it stops printing money, they cut it off. See also, Skylanders, Tony Hawk, whatever.
Right,
and it's all got to be annualized. But I mean, one of the, Xbox scooped up Obsidian, and one of the first things that came out of that was Pentiment, which is arguably one of the least marketable games you could possibly publish.
10 out of 10.
And it's an awesome game. I'm not knocking it. It's a killer game,
exactly.
But I just love that felt like a very good faith move. And if we see kind of some old Activision, franchises get dusted off and turned into maybe even kick it to a third party studio under Microsoft, that could be great. That could be a lot of fun.
To your point, it's keeping your talented creators creatively refreshed and energized, right? That's what Pentiment did for Josh Sawyer, a renowned game director in this industry. It keeps that team creatively refreshed to then, I'm sure Josh Sawyer and then that small Pentiment team are probably now going to work on a really big, large-scale new thing at Obsidian.
Well, I mean, in the same way that we've got the sort of the Raven id under one roof again with, Obsidian and Bethesda under one roof, it's maybe someday we'll see a New Vegas 2. Maybe.
Sure.
Maybe. Fingers crossed. I don't know. Sorry, Kat, you were going to say?
Well, obviously, it's all about Game Pass in a lot of ways. Pentiment was great for Game Pass, as was Hi-Fi Rush earlier this year. It's funny that you bring up Raven, because I've always thought Raven was kind of a tragedy, actually, because they did make so many of those great games that you talked about. There was actually a split in the 2000s. The Human Head Studios moved away and took a lot of their talent with them, and Raven settled into more of a support role. I would expect that maybe what we'll see is that if this deal goes through, Raven will end up becoming much more of a support studio for the entire constellation of studios, because my understanding is if there's one thing that Xbox has struggled with a little bit, certainly compared to Sony, is having the infrastructure supporting all of these studios. It's been a little bit of a laissez-faire approach, allowing the studios to all work within themselves without too many changes, but PlayStation is able to pivot resources between different teams and move things around, and that is why maybe they've had a lot of success on their exclusivity kind of platforms and such. I totally agree with you that it's all about big games. I'm curious to see World of Warcraft on Game Pass, I think might be an interesting turn for that. I'm curious to see what Blizzard really stands out to me as what's going to happen with them, what's going to happen with Overwatch, what's going to happen with Diablo 4. Blizzard has been in a weird place for a few years now, so this might be a fresh start, not the least because Bobby Kotick I expect would probably depart from Activision Blizzard, and I think that's an unadulterated good for Activision Blizzard, and I think that a lot of people would agree, and Blizzard in particular would stand to benefit from that.
Yeah, and we were talking about this on Unlocked, where if some of these teams and some of these IPs that are getting dusty in the Activision Blizzard vault are allowed to come back out and see the light of day again, then those I could absolutely see being exclusive to Xbox. As to Kat's point, very additive to Game Pass, additive to the Xbox ecosystem. If Hexen comes back, and there's no way that, I'm not saying Phil Spencer was making some sort of preliminary announcement with that shirt, but it was an intentional choice to wear that shirt. Of anything he could have possibly...
Maybe he spilled something on his other shirt, and that's the only shirt they had that they could put him in.
I think he had that shirt made because I've never seen a Hexen t-shirt in my life before, and I want to buy one now.
Maybe it's just I like Hexen. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he likes it enough to greenlight something new, ideally from Raven. But yeah, I could see, these tent poles that you're talking about. Yeah, the Diablo's going to stay multi-platform. Will it eventually be added to Game Pass? Yeah, I think probably eventually it will, even though the president of Blizzard, Mike Ibarra, was saying this week, no, we have no intention.
Give it a couple of years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But in time, I do think Diablo 4 will and everything will hit Game Pass. But yeah, the tent poles will probably stay multi-platform. But any new seeds that sprout from the freshly tilled earth after Microsoft freshens up the garden here. How long can I keep this garden ongoing? Do you think?
Call of Duty day one on Game Pass?
Eventually.
You think so?
Yeah, I believe there was, don't quote me on this, I saw this from one of the sort of legal folks on Twitter that's been commenting on this. I believe there was language that suggested that couldn't happen until 2025, but do not quote me on that.
Because if I were PlayStation, that would kind of hurt, right? Because if Call of Duty is day one on Game Pass, well, of course you're going to probably go for the Game Pass option. I mean, I think that there are plenty of people who are already on PlayStation and such, but that would be such a huge incentive if you can get the subscription and then you can get
now,
Call of Duty.
It's possible that these 10-year deals that again are now on the table for Sony, and they'll probably just need to sign it. It may say we won't put this on Game Pass, like the Call of Duty again.
And I think there's probably language
rule.
Along those lines, actually. So,
but anything new that sprouts up, I would expect will be Xbox exclusive.
Sure. I think two things to look at. One would be Elder Scrolls Online, which it's not free on Game Pass. You still have to buy it. I think is it free on Game Pass?
You can play it, but then I think like the major expansions.
Yeah, I think there
are still things you can. I think you can play some of it. Right. But not the entire everything.
But you get little perks as a Game Pass subscriber. Isn't that right? Like there's armor or something?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I know I downloaded it off of Game Pass to try it out. So
there we
that
go.
That much I know.
Well, I feel like a bad example for me to bring up because I clearly don't know what I'm talking about there. But another one would be kind of what Rockstar did, where on PlayStation Plus they had a thing there for a minute that was GTA Online was getting like $1 million a month in GTA Online for PS Plus subscribers for like a good 6 months or a year or whatever, which I'm sure got plenty of people's attention. Flip side, they just put full-on GTA 5 on Game Pass for a minute. I think it's on there right now again.
Yes.
And it's, those are different ways to approach it. But I could very easily see the Game Pass thing that Call of Duty has going for it immediately being like, hey, you get some cool stuff playing Warzone if you're a Game Pass subscriber. You get some kind of perks, some kind of bonuses. I don't know, new skins for your guns, a new hat, something along those lines. And that also, could apply to Diablo or WoW or anything like that. On that note, Kat, what is the franchise under Activision Blizzard that you would be most excited personally to see?
I saw a list on the teleprompter, so I'll cheat. StarCraft?
What's that?
Oh my gosh.
No,
It's funny, I've been playing the OG StarCraft a fair amount on PC, and it's so good. The remaster in particular is wonderful. And StarCraft 2 kind of came to a stuttering and sad end, but there is an appetite to revive real-time strategy. I think that Warcraft 4 would actually be a pretty big deal if they ever actually made it. So it would be nice if Blizzard had the breathing room to make good on its legacy of real-time strategy. That's what I want, because frankly, Brood War is one of the most brilliant games ever made. It's brilliant. It's let's honor that legacy.
Yeah. So on that note, our big survey this week is what Blizzard Activision property would you like to see Xbox kind of dust off and do new stuff with? We got StarCraft, Lost Vikings, Prototype, Hexen. What else do we have? Tenchu, which I believe got kicked to FromSoft and then sort of turned into Sekiro, I think. And then Guitar/DJ Hero. So anyway, that's up on IGN. Go vote on that. Our poll from last week was which fall 2023 game are you most excited to play? It was in the lead by a small margin, Starfield, followed closely by Spider-Man 2. Not that surprising.
Ones, yeah.
Mortal Kombat 1 had 5.7% of the vote. Assassin's Creed Mirage with 3.9, Forza Motorsport with 2.1. So, gonna be a neck and neck race for Starfield and Spider-Man. On that note, that'll do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you so much to Ryan and Kat, and also to our wonderful studio crew for making this happen. We will be back next Friday at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern with more PS5 and Xbox Series X news. We'll see you then.